I never thought I'd be posting here, but I guess life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I'm John, 35M, and I've been married to Sarah, 32F, for the past 7 years. We met in college, fell in love, and tied the knot soon after graduation. Things were great at first. We both landed decent jobs, bought a modest house in the suburbs, and started building our life together. But looking back, I realized there were always signs that Sarah wasn't entirely content with our middle-class lifestyle. She'd make offhand comments about our friends' vacations or the cars they drove, hinting at her desire for more. I brushed it off, thinking it was just harmless daydreaming. Boy, was I wrong. The first real red flag appeared about a year ago. Sarah suddenly started taking more interest in her appearance, new clothes, fancy haircuts, even a gym membership. At first, I was thrilled. I thought maybe she was just trying to spice things up for us. But then I noticed she was dressing up even when we didn't have plans together. Her work hours became erratic too. She'd claim to have late meetings or client dinners, but would come home with no details to share. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give vague answers and quickly change the subject. I started feeling like I was living with a stranger. One night, I woke up to find her texting at 2 a.m., the blue light of her phone illuminating her face in our dark bedroom. When I asked who she was talking to, she jumpy said it was just work stuff and quickly put the phone away. That's when the pit in my stomach started to grow. I tried to ignore my suspicions, telling myself I was being paranoid. But the signs kept piling up. Sarah became more distant, both emotionally and physically. Our sex life, once pretty active, dwindled to almost nothing. When I tried to initiate, she'd always have an excuse: headache, tired from work, not in the mood. Then came the weekend trips. Every few weeks, Sarah would announce she had to go out of town for work conferences or team-building retreats. She'd leave on Friday and return late Sunday, looking refreshed and oddly happy. I offered to drive her to the airport once, but she insisted on taking an Uber. The final straw came when I accidentally stumbled upon a receipt in her purse while looking for a pen. It was for a high-end lingerie store, dated during one of her supposed work trips. The amount spent made my eyes bulge. It was more than our monthly mortgage payment. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. With my suspicions at an all-time high, I did something I never thought I'd do: I snooped. I feel shitty about it, but I was desperate for answers. While Sarah was in the shower one morning, I checked her phone. It was password protected, but I knew her well enough to guess it on the third try: her childhood dog's name and birth year, if you're wondering. What I found made me want to vomit. There were dozens of messages from someone saved as Mike W. The texts were flirty, explicit, and left no doubt about what was going on. There were plans for meetups, comments about their last encounter, and even a few risque photos that I quickly scrolled past, feeling sick. The worst part? This Mike guy was clearly loaded. There were mentions of gifts he'd bought her, fancy restaurants they'd visited, and plans for a weekend getaway to the Bahamas. I saw red as I realized my wife was not only cheating on me but living out some sugar baby fantasy with this rich asshole. I put the phone down just as I heard the shower turn off. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just discovered. Should I confront her right away? Should I gather more evidence? I felt like I was in some twisted episode of a cheating spouse TV show. Sarah came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming to herself. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek as she passed by, acting like everything was normal. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand answers. But I held it in, mumbled something about being late for work, and practically ran out of the house. I spent the entire day at work in a daze, unable to focus on anything. My coworkers must have thought I was losing it. I kept playing scenarios in my head, imagining confronting Sarah, imagining confronting this Mike guy, imagining just packing my bags and disappearing. By the time I got home that evening, I had decided to confront Sarah. I couldn't live with this knowledge eating me up inside. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I got home before Sarah that night, which was unusual. I paced around our living room, rehearsing what I was going to say, trying to keep my anger in check. When I finally heard her key in the lock, my heart started racing. Sarah walked in, looking surprised to see me. "Oh, hey honey," she said casually. "You're home early." I cut right to the chase. "Who's Mike?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. The color drained from her face. She stammered. "Don't bullshit me, Sarah. I saw the text. I know what's going on." For a moment, she looked like she was going to deny it. Then her expression changed, and she went on the offensive. "You went through my phone?" she screeched. "How dare you invade my privacy like that?" I couldn't believe it. She was trying to make me the bad guy. "Are you seriously trying to turn this around on me?" I shouted. "You're the one fucking some rich old dude behind my back?" Sarah's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Well, what did you expect?" she spat. "You never gave me the life I wanted. Mike can give me things you never could." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stood there, stunned by Sarah's brutal honesty. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, was suddenly a stranger to me. "So that's it?" I managed to choke out. "Our whole marriage was just about money for you?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, John. It's not just about the money. Mike appreciates me. He listens to me. He makes me feel alive. And I don't." I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. "Oh please," she scoffed. "When's the last time you took me somewhere exciting? When's the last time you surprised me with anything more than takeout and Netflix?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "We're partners, Sarah. We're supposed to build a life together, not this." She laughed bitterly. "Build a life? We've been stuck in the same rut for years. I want more, John. I deserve more." The coldness in her voice, the complete lack of remorse, it was like a knife twisting in my chest. I realized then that the woman I married was long gone, if she had ever really existed at all. I felt like I was drowning, struggling to breathe as the full weight of Sarah's betrayal crashed over me. But as the initial shock began to wear off, anger started to bubble up inside me. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. Sarah shrugged, seemingly unbothered by my distress. "Does it matter?" "It fucking matters to me," I shouted, losing my cool. "How long have you been lying to my face?" She sighed dramatically, as if my questions were a mere inconvenience. "Fine. If you must know, it's been about 8 months. 8 months. My mind reeled. That was around the time of our last anniversary. The anniversary where she'd seemed so happy, so in love. Had it all been an act? "That weekend in wine country," I said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "You said you were with your sister. But you were with him, weren't you?" Sarah didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She just nodded, a small smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "Mike has a lovely vacation home there. Much nicer than that cheap B&B you took me to for our honeymoon." Each word was like a dagger to my heart. I couldn't believe how cruel she was being, how little our marriage seemed to mean to her. I felt like I was going to be sick. The memories of our relationship were now tainted, twisted by the knowledge of her infidelity. I stumbled to the couch and sat down, my head in my hands. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you just tell me you were unhappy? We could have worked on things, tried to make it better." Sarah let out a harsh laugh. "Oh, John. Always so naive. Do you really think you could have given me what I wanted? The lifestyle I craved?" I looked up at her, really seeing her for the first time. The designer clothes, the expensive jewelry, all gifts from Mike, I realized. How had I been so blind? "So what now?" I asked, feeling utterly defeated. "Are you leaving me for him?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, and I saw a flicker of something, uncertainty? Guilt? Cross her face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "I don't know," she said, her voice softer now. "Mike's complicated. He's married too, you know. But he's talking about leaving his wife." I felt a surge of anger. "And you believe him? God, Sarah, how stupid can you be?" Her eyes flashed dangerously. "Don't you dare call me stupid. I know what I'm doing." But I could see it in her eyes, she wasn't as sure as she pretended to be. For the first time that night, I felt a glimmer of satisfaction. Maybe her perfect little affair wasn't so perfect after all. The satisfaction was short-lived, though, as the reality of our situation came crashing back down. Here we were, standing in the living room of the home we'd built together, suddenly strangers. "So what happens now?" I asked, feeling drained. "Are you going to keep seeing him?" Sarah's face hardened again. "I don't see how that's any of your business anymore, John." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Any of my business? You're my wife." "Oh please," she scoffed. "Let's not pretend that means anything now. You know what? I'm glad you found out. I'm tired of sneaking around, tired of pretending to be happy with this mediocre life." Her words stung, but they also ignited something in me. Anger, yes, but also a sense of resolve. I stood up, squaring my shoulders. "Fine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "If that's how you feel, then get out." Sarah blinked, clearly not expecting this. "What? You heard me. Get out. Go to your rich boyfriend. Go live your exciting life. But you don't get to have both. You don't get to treat me like this and still have the safety net of our marriage." For the first time that night, Sarah looked genuinely shocked. It was clear she hadn't anticipated this reaction from me. Sarah's shock quickly turned to indignation. "You can't kick me out," she sputtered. "This is my house too." I laughed bitterly. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you've already checked out of this marriage. You want the excitement and luxury Mike offers? Fine. But you don't get to have your cake and eat it too." She glared at me, her eyes narrowing. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I shot back, surprised by my own boldness. "I'm done being your safety net, Sarah. I deserve better than that." For a moment, we stood there in tense silence, neither of us backing down. Then, something in Sarah's demeanor shifted. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "John, come on," she said, her voice softer now. "We can work this out. I made a mistake, okay? I got carried away with the attention, the gifts. But we have history. We can fix this." I was stunned by her sudden change in tactics. Was this the real Sarah, or just another manipulation? Either way, I realized I didn't care anymore. "No, Sarah," I said firmly. "We can't fix this. You didn't make a mistake. You made a series of choices, for 8 months. You lied to me, cheated on me, and just minutes ago, you were rubbing it in my face. There's no coming back from that." Sarah's face crumpled, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I thought I had married. Tears welled up in her eyes. "John, please," she pleaded. "I don't want to lose you. I love you." I felt a pang in my chest, but I steeled myself against it. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have said those cruel things earlier." She reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "I didn't mean those things. I was just scared. Defensive. Please, can we just talk about this?" I shook my head. "There's nothing left to talk about, Sarah. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." "But where am I supposed to go?" she asked, her voice small. "I'm sure Mike has a spare room in that fancy house of his," I replied coldly. "Or maybe one of the expensive hotels he takes you to?" Sarah flinched at my words. "John, don't be like this. This isn't you." "You're right," I said. "The old John would have forgiven you, would have bent over backwards to make you happy. But that John is gone. You killed him." I walked to the front door and opened it. "I want you out by tomorrow. I'll be staying at a friend's place tonight. When I come back, I expect you to be gone." Sarah stood there, tears streaming down her face. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Not anymore. As I walked out of the house, leaving a stunned Sarah behind, I felt a mix of emotions washing over me. There was anger, of course, and a deep, aching sadness. But there was also a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt like I was taking control of my life. I got in my car and started driving, not really sure where I was going. I ended up at my best friend Mike's place. Yeah, I know, same name as the other guy. Life's got a sick sense of humor sometimes. I hadn't told him what was going on yet, but one look at my face and he knew something was seriously wrong. "Dude, what happened?" he asked as he ushered me inside. I collapsed onto his couch and spilled everything. The affair, the confrontation, kicking Sarah out, it all came pouring out of me in a rush. Mike listened, his face a mix of shock and anger on my behalf. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Holy shit, man. I'm so sorry. What a fucking mess. I nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. Yeah, tell me about it. Mike got up and returned with 2 beers. He handed one to me. So what's your next move? I took a long swig before answering. Honestly? I have no idea. I guess I need to find a divorce lawyer. Mike nodded solemnly. Yeah, probably a good idea. You need to protect yourself, man. Who knows what she might try to pull? I hadn't even thought about that. The reality of divorce, of legally ending my marriage, was starting to sink in. It felt surreal. God, how did I not see this coming? I groaned, rubbing my face. Was I really that blind? Mike shook his head. Don't do that to yourself, John. This isn't on you. Sarah's the one who cheated. She's the one who lied. You trusted your wife, that's not a crime. His words helped, but I still felt like an idiot. I just keep replaying everything in my head. All the signs I missed, all the excuses I believed. I feel like such a fool. You're not a fool, Mike insisted. You're a good guy who got screwed over by someone you trusted. It happens, Smith. It sucks, but it happens. We sat in silence for a while, nursing our beers. Finally, Mike spoke up again. You know you can stay here as long as you need, right? Guest room's all yours. I felt a rush of gratitude for my friend. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. As the night wore on, we talked more. About the logistics of divorce, about how to move forward, about anything and everything to keep my mind off Sarah. By the time I crawled into bed in Mike's guest room, I felt drained but somehow lighter. The road ahead was going to be tough, but for the first time, I felt like I might actually make it through this. The next few weeks were a blur of legal consultations, awkward conversations with family and friends, and trying to adjust to my new reality. I went back to the house the day after our confrontation, half expecting, maybe even hoping, that Sarah would still be there. But true to my demand, she was gone. The closet was half empty, and her favorite knickknacks were missing from the shelves. It was like she'd been erased from our home, leaving only ghostly reminders of her presence. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. My boss, noticing something was off, pulled me aside one day. When I explained the situation, he was surprisingly understanding. He even offered me some time off, but I declined. The last thing I needed was more time alone with my thoughts. The divorce proceedings started, and it was uglier than I expected. Sarah hired a shark of a lawyer who tried to paint me as controlling and neglectful. It was surreal, listening to this stranger twist our life together into something unrecognizable. My own lawyer advised me to fight fire with fire, but I couldn't bring myself to stoop to that level. Despite everything, I didn't want to destroy Sarah. I just wanted out. One day, about a month after everything blew up, I ran into Sarah at our favorite coffee shop. It was bound to happen eventually in our small town, but it still caught me off guard. She looked different. Tired maybe. The designer clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. John, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. How are you? I stared at her for a moment, unsure how to respond. How was I? Angry, hurt, betrayed, relieved, scared, all at once. But looking at her now, I realized something important. I didn't love her anymore. The woman I loved was gone, if she had ever really existed. I'm okay, I finally said. Getting by. You? She nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. Same. But I cut her off. Save it, Sarah. There's nothing left to say. I grabbed my coffee and walked out, leaving her standing there. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Maybe, just maybe, I was going to be all right after all. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. The divorce was finalized, and while it wasn't easy, I managed to keep the house. Sarah didn't put up much of a fight for it in the end. I heard through the grapevine that things with her rich boyfriend hadn't worked out quite as she'd hoped. Apparently, he wasn't as eager to leave his wife as he'd led Sarah to believe. I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. I started seeing a therapist, which helped me process my emotions and work through the trust issues that Sarah's betrayal had left me with. It wasn't easy, but slowly I started to feel like myself again, or rather, a new version of myself. Stronger, wiser, and less willing to ignore red flags. My friends were incredibly supportive throughout the whole ordeal. They rallied around me, keeping me distracted with game nights, hikes, and the occasional night out. Mike, in particular, was a rock. He let me crash at his place for as long as I needed, and was always there to lend an ear or offer advice. One night, about 6 months after the split, Mike and I were having a beer on his porch. He turned to me with a serious look. "You know, John," he said, "I'm proud of you, man. You've handled this whole thing with more grace than most people would." I shrugged, feeling a bit uncomfortable with the praise. "I don't know about that. I've had my moments." Mike shook his head. "Nah, seriously. You didn't let it break you. You're moving forward. That takes guts." His words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time, I really thought about how far I'd come. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was starting to thrive. As life settled into a new normal, I found myself rediscovering old passions and exploring new ones. I picked up my guitar again, something I'd neglected during the last few years of my marriage. I joined a local rock climbing gym, pushing myself physically and mentally in ways I never had before. It wasn't all smooth sailing, of course. There were still nights when the loneliness hit hard, when I'd find myself staring at old photos, wondering where things went wrong. But those moments became fewer and farther between as time passed. About a year after the divorce, I ran into Sarah again. This time, it was at a mutual friend's birthday party. I'd known she might be there, but I decided to go anyway. I wasn't going to let her presence dictate my life anymore. When I saw her across the room, I was surprised by my own reaction. There was no surge of anger, no pang of heartache. Just a dull ache of disappointment and a touch of pity. She looked good on the surface, expensive clothes, perfect makeup, but there was a hardness to her eyes that hadn't been there before. She approached me cautiously, a drink clutched tightly in her hand. "John," she said, her voice tight. "It's good to see you." I nodded, keeping my voice neutral. "You too, Sarah. How've you been?" She launched into a clearly rehearsed speech about her new job and her travels, but I could see the strain behind her smile. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly. "I'm glad you're doing well," I said simply. "Take care, Sarah." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I realized then that I had finally, truly moved on. In the following months, I continued to focus on personal growth and rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my career, earning a promotion that I might not have pursued if I was still married and complacent. I also started volunteering at a local animal shelter, finding unexpected joy in helping abandoned pets find new homes. One Saturday afternoon, while walking an energetic shelter dog named Max in the park, I quite literally ran into someone. As I apologized profusely and tried to untangle Max's leash from around our legs, I found myself face to face with a woman named Emily. She was out for a jog, and after we sorted out the leash situation, we ended up chatting for a while. There was an easy rapport between us, and before I knew it, we'd been talking for over an hour. As she was about to leave, she hesitated for a moment before asking if I'd like to grab coffee sometime. I surprised myself by saying yes without hesitation. Our coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into more dates. Emily was kind, funny, and passionate about her work as a pediatric nurse. She loved animals as much as I did, and we often spent weekends exploring hiking trails with Max, who I'd ended up adopting from the shelter. As our relationship grew, I found myself opening up to her about my past. I was nervous at first, worried that the baggage from my failed marriage might scare her off. But Emily listened with empathy and understanding, sharing her own past experiences with heartbreak and growth. One night, as we sat on my porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a serious look. "John," she said softly, "I want you to know that I'm not Sarah. I won't hurt you like that." I felt a lump form in my throat, touched by her words and the sincerity behind them. "I know," I replied, squeezing her hand. "I trust you." And I realized in that moment that I truly did. As I sit here now, typing this out, I can't help but reflect on the journey I've been through. It's been 3 years since that fateful night when my world came crashing down. 3 years of pain, growth, self-discovery, and ultimately healing. Emily and I are still together, our relationship growing stronger each day. We recently moved in together, and while the thought of sharing my life with someone again was initially scary, it feels right. She's not Sarah, and I'm not the same man I was back then. We're building something new, something honest and real. I've learned a lot through this experience. I've learned the importance of self-respect and setting boundaries. I've learned that it's okay to prioritize my own happiness. I've learned that trust is earned, not given blindly. And most importantly, I've learned that even when life knocks you down, you can always get back up. To anyone out there going through something similar, I want you to know that it does get better. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but you can come out the other side stronger. Don't let someone else's actions define you. Don't let betrayal harden your heart. Take the time to heal, to rediscover yourself, and to build a life that makes you truly happy. As for Sarah, I heard she eventually married another wealthy man, though I don't know the details. I hope she's found whatever it is she was looking for. I've long since let go of my anger towards her. What she did was wrong, but holding on to that resentment was only hurting me. Looking back, I can see now that our marriage was never as perfect as I thought it was. We had issues long before the affair, but we both chose to ignore them. In a strange way, I'm almost grateful for what happened. It forced me to confront those issues, to grow, and to create a life that's authentically mine. If there's any advice I can offer from my experience, it's this. 1. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. 2. Communication is key. Don't let issues fester. 3. Never compromise your self-respect for someone else's happiness. 4. It's okay to be angry, but don't let that anger consume you. 5. Healing takes time. Be patient with yourself. 6. Don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's from friends, family, or a professional. 7. Sometimes, the end of one chapter is just the beginning of a better one. Remember, you're stronger than you think. You can survive this and you can thrive. I did, and so can you. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for watching my videos, sharing them, and supporting me along the way. Your views, comments, and likes are the driving force behind my passion to create captivating and unexpected stories. Every tale I share is more than just a plot. It's a journey of emotions, lessons, and reflections that we experience together. Your engagement brings life and soul to this channel. Thank you for sticking with me until the very end of each video, because the finale of every story is where the real impact lies. I promise to continue delivering twists and turns that surprise, inspire, and resonate with your hearts.